Welcome everyone to Becoming Awesome, AWS's live stream podcast where Amazon insiders introduce you to the humans of AWS. I'm your co-host Ray Thomas, a senior recruiter with AWS's infrastructure organization, along with my lovely, incredible co-host Jenna, principal recruiter. And whether you're watching this live on both, whether it's on YouTube or our careers YouTube channel or our Twitch channel. We want to welcome you. We're ready to engage with you live in chat. It's actually one of our favorite things to do. And if you're watching this later on demand, I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today we have three incredible leaders from very different backgrounds. One is Leslie Cintron, UX researcher and technical content experience. Nicole Bradley, principal account manager, ISV for Private Equity. And Bryant Pickford, a security specialist solutions architect from our worldwide specialist organization. And can't wait to talk to each of them. Again, they have very different backgrounds, so we're going to have diverse set of opinions and experiences, which we hope you'll all be inspired with. But before we begin, Jenna, great to see you. Always happy when you're here. How are you doing?
Yeah. I'm doing really well. I think you're right on with all these different profiles. We're going to learn a lot and share a lot today. But more importantly, I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything new back there in your office. Something seems different. What's going on?
I don't think so. Nothing. It's all the same thing so far. But
okay.
The only thing that is slightly different is that that bar right there. I have it set to change colors. Before, sometimes it'll be one static color, but that's really about it.
Yeah, I'm picking up on something.
It's the vibe, maybe the mood, because the colors are changing. But do you remember? I don't know if you were on the show. There was one time when all of a sudden it just started blinking red, and I was like, "What is going on?" It looked like there was like some kind of alarm going off, and Aaron Hunter was watching. He's like, "Oh, we have Sev 1 happening in Ray's studio." So it was funny. But it was like a funny moment. I had to like, wait, this is too distracting. I've seen it happen. Let me jump. But yeah.
I'm so engrossed in what everybody's saying that I don't pay any attention to your lights. Otherwise, I'm so sorry.
That's all good. It's all
I have
good.
been getting into lights, though. I have some new interests of mine. I think that's why I'm noticing something different. Anyway, more importantly, let's bring on our friends, our guests.
Yes. Let's do that. So welcome, Nicole. Welcome, Leslie. Welcome, Brian. How are you all doing today?
Doing good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining. Let's quickly start off with introductions. I'm just going to go down what I see listed on the screen here. So, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. I'm a 6.5-year Amazonian coming over from the dark side of IBM, and really excited to come in and be involved with customers doing great things in ISV space. Independent software vendors. This year, I'm exclusively private equity, but just love being with microcosms of AWS builders.
Awesome. You're also a bar raiser, as I know. So we'll dive into that a little bit because we do have some interesting LPs that came out not too long ago that I think some people need a little bit of clarity on. So let's definitely.
I love that. Definitely.
Tons of awards there. I'm seeing a lot of awards on your
Yes. So this was my MicroStrategy Award. I finally became cool with my son, who's a 24-year-old Bitcoin lover. So I got to show him a picture where Michael Saylor was handing me the award. And then Boomi, I won their cloud hyperscaler of the year this year. And then these are AWS awards.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll dig into that.
Thank you.
Leslie, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. My name is Leslie Cintron. I work as a UX researcher in the technical content experience organization within AWS, which is really all about documentation and guidance for how to use the services. And so I've been here a little bit over 2 years. I am coming actually from academia. I was a university professor for many years, and then moved over into doing research, government-funded research, and then shifted over to industry and tech. And so I look forward to, I'm usually the one interviewing others as a UX researcher. So I'm really looking forward to learning all about everyone who's on today as well.
Awesome. And I almost, maybe I should have introduced you as Dr. Cintron, since you have a PhD in sociology from Harvard University, which is incredibly impressive. So I guess that really comes in to play with your research. So looking forward to seeing how you use that. Excellent. Happy to have you here.
Thanks.
Bryant Pickford, we already have a couple of things in common, that we talked about right before the show. So, but welcome. Introduce yourself, and we'll dive into that other part.
Yeah. So my name is Bryant Pickford. I'm a security specialist, solutions architect. Honestly, I've done about 4.5 years. I'm really close to my 5-year mark at AWS. I think when it comes to my background, I probably have one of the most oddest of the bunch. So I was still in college when I joined AWS. I was finishing up my bachelor's, and I was put into a program called TechU. For those who don't know what TechU is, it's this AWS early career talent program where they'll take 6 months, they'll train you in all things cloud, compute, database, stuff like that. And then from there, you put into a job field. And so for me, my passion was always cybersecurity. A lot of my previous positions before were cybersecurity. And so that's how I got into this current position. And I've been going for the last, 4.5 years. It's been great.
That's awesome. Welcome. And, we say this is about the humans of AWS, and you shared something on your arm. Can you share that?
Yeah. So before, we were having a conversation about, there's a very much almost like we're seen as myths and mysticism. Like, we're kind of seen as giants a little bit when I speak publicly. And I'm just like, I'm just human, man. Like I wake up every day. I don't know if you could see it, but it says "Be Human." I have a tattoo that says "Be Human," and it's sometimes hard to remember that I am human, or maybe that's just the way I was programmed. Who knows?
That's fantastic. And you also noticed like the Linkin Park shirt. And turns out that we were at the same concert once they reunited with the incredible new vocalist Emily Armstrong. So excited about her. But that's just it. We talk about being human, right? And the new campaign. I'm having WWE belts and some of the videos that we're putting out into the universe. So it's who we are. So I want to, Jenna, do you want to take this over?
Well, there's one thing I noticed about Bryant that I would just want to call out on the topic of being human. It looks like you worked in our fulfillment centers before you became an architect. How does that shape your experience in being on the corporate side of technology?
So I wasn't really expecting this. So I worked in the warehouse. I worked in a sortation center or fulfillment center back when I lived in Miami. And I was just a college kid. Just trying to make money on the weekends. And so going from that to more of like the corporate, like AWS cloud side was a massive leap. But one where I kind of already got a lot of what I needed from the fulfillment center. The fulfillment centers, if anyone ever works in those, you're working with hundreds of people. Everyone's really open. If you ever have any questions or concerns, you can speak to almost anyone. And that was very true in AWS. Like I can contact random people and they'll be like, hey, what do you need? But that jump was still, for me at the time, was massive. I went back to school to sort of finish up my bachelor's so that I can, take that next step forward. But throughout my entire process at the time, at the fulfillment center, even to now, it hasn't really changed much. It's just something that I was more passionate about, that I wanted to undertake.
Yeah. So did the Be Human tattoo come before or after that experience?
So I got my Be Human tattoo 2 days after I turned 18, to the dismay of my mother, who is this, very Hispanic traditional, woman. Awesome. I love my mom. But Yeah, it was one thing that I always wanted to have, not just as a reminder to the fact that I'm not, a robot, but just something to kind of, solidify the fact that, like, we're all having a human experience, right? Like, everything, something I always tell people whenever, I, meet people or, go to conferences or travel is, be comfortable being uncomfortable, or be comfortable being uncomfortable. Whether it be in any stage of your life, just be okay with the experience of being human. And that's kind of where that tattoo sort of stems from.
Awesome.
Well, you're a good son, because I asked my kids to wait till 18 and they got theirs at 16 and 17.
Thank you.
Very respectful.
Yeah.
We have some nice comments here, Ray. Did you see?
No, it's more interesting comments around Elon and Neuralinks and whatnot. So,
Okay.
So Leslie, let's bring you on quickly. Since you have your doctorate of sociology, right, from MIT, and we're just talking about being human and everything else, tell us, like, and you're hearing what this show's about. I just want to get your perspective on what you're learning about us humans here at AWS and in general.
Well, as a sociologist, I have to say that one of the areas that I focused on most in my research is diversity and inclusion. And I have to say that, tech companies are working at, improving this, and we still have a long way to go, but we're making progress. And it's great to see, so many different people from different walks of life, different nationalities in tech. And I think that diversity only strengthens, the kinds of products that we create. Because when you're thinking about it, if we're creating products for our customers, we kind of have to reflect our customers, in those of us who are doing the producing. And so yeah, I think it's been really interesting to be a part of AWS, and to see the strides that are being made in that diversity realm. So yeah, and it's diversity with the widest of definitions, right? Diversity of thought, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of race, gender, all of the things are important, and so it only makes us better.
Can you tell us more about what you actually are researching?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I moved from academia to industry, but the area that I work in, which is technical content experience, is really about how to teach people who are new to, let's say, AWS or a service within AWS, how to use that service. And so in a lot of ways, it's about education, right? And so it's how to do the most effective educating in the most effective ways to ensure that our customers get up and working and building quickly. And so technical content experience is just that. Used to be called Docs. It used to be called AWS Documentation, but it has expanded a little bit as technology has expanded as well. But if you think about user guides, if you've ever come in contact with a user guide, those are the kinds of things that I'm studying, how consumers, how our users and prospective users, new customers, are kind of interacting with what we produce in terms of content.
Awesome. Thank you. Nicole, let's bring you on. I want to get your perspective on, because what Leslie just mentioned, diversity of thought, is something that I always talk about when we look at the leadership principles, et cetera. You're also a bar raiser, as we mentioned earlier. Just want to get your thoughts around that. What do we really look for? What does diversity of thought really what does it really mean, and how do people really apply it, and what are the kind of outcomes that we normally see when you do have diversity of thought?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say, and just real quick, I want to add to Leslie's role. I can't tell you, as a seller into independent software vendors who are microcosms of AWS, our documentation by bar none, it's the best out there. So kudos, keep up the great work. And I would say, especially prior to, I think it was 2016, we didn't even have salespeople, maybe even a little earlier. And so our documentation was the only real path to deployment. And it's, very well respected. So thank you for that hard work. And then kind of to your point, Ray, in the, diversity of thought. So as a bar raiser, one of my jobs is to make sure that the loops, right, which means the people that AWS has consolidated to interview this one person, a series of anywhere between 5 to 7 different conversations around our leadership principles, are without bias, right? And that they're diverse. And so diversity of thought is also recognizing that the person coming in to talk to us doesn't necessarily have the luxury of living our leadership principles, and that their examples may not show that, and that we have to also bring our diversity into the conversation so that, they recognize that, hey, this person worked at JP Morgan Chase for the last 3 years. They weren't really able to have backbone, disagree, and commit, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of it. So you have to think through your conversations and not pigeonhole someone right into that space, but try to pull it out. Like, what would you do if you could? How would you have done that if you were able to? And if you don't have that diversity of thought in the loop, and you don't have that plan to pull the bias out when you do see someone who didn't, kind of think about it on the feet and potentially come in a different direction, that they're not being harmed by our lack of innovation or innovative ways of interviewing someone. So, I too often, matter of fact, I love to tell this story. I had one of probably the very first female bar raisers that in our space in AWS, Elizabeth Moon, for my loop. And so she was great. And one of my mentors still, even though she's gone, away from AWS, she's still one of my favorite people. And she taught me so much about the importance of having not just men or women or, Black or white or Asian or, Spanish, but also different socioeconomic families, right? It's not just about our culture, our heritage, but it's also about our economic diversity, right? And, pulling people up and giving them a freedom to speak and be who they are, regardless of that background.
I had a big smile on my face when you said Elizabeth Moon, because when I first joined AWS, January 2019, she was the person that I had to work with, and the team that was reporting to her, all the other managers. So she was the senior manager, and when I started off as a contractor, and then they asked me to loop, and when I had the question around earns trust, I actually shared a story around earning trust with Elizabeth, because I was really early on, and I was like, I completely screwed up in one of the very first org meetings. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know I would be called on. So
it's crazy.
I
would say that's funny because, back in those days, right, I started in July of 2018. We were harsh. Like, I remember being in a meeting where we were doing account plans reviews, and literally this guy had an 18-page document, and there were, we all had our red pens, and there were too many grammatical errors, and we just, the leader of leaders just said, nope, we're not doing this one anymore. And now we're much more, sensitive in that area, some good and some bad, but I think those lessons that we learned really kind of helped us, stay in that day one culture and remember the importance of, it's the little things. It's not just the big ideas.
I really appreciate how you shared humanizing the interview experience, and that somebody may not come from a culture of it, you still can give them the opportunity by asking, flipping it around. Started the conversation by saying that it is a very objective assessment. So I'm just wondering if you can just maybe elaborate for people a little bit more on what you mean by that, and how we drive how our interview process is driven by data-driven insights, and that the leadership principles are not actually subjective in thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have these guidelines, right? We have the role guidelines, which are kind of what the responsibilities are. And the majority of the interview process is not really about technical or functional fit. That's the manager and the team usually do that before we go through the loop. So the loop, we have, 14, 16 leadership principles, and then we have, two leadership principles per person. And as the conversations happen, they're very behavioral questions, and there's not a right answer or a wrong answer to that point of subjective or objective. But what there is a process of how you went through that story, right? Not how you went through it. Well, yes, also how you went through it and explaining it, but how you lived it at the moment and how you shared it, right? What was the situation? What was the task at hand? How did you resolve it? What were the actions that you took, right? The STAR format. But also, as an interviewer, you have to pull sometimes that information out if it's not in the answer given initially. So the example I used before, JP Morgan Chase, is a great example in context because it is a very hierarchical, right? It's financial services. You come in, you do your check things, and you don't deviate, you don't question, and that's not AWS culture, not Amazonian culture. So if I see someone who just kind of is not inclined because of these reasons, I try to ask that person that did the interview in the loop debrief, they come from a culture where that wasn't allowed, right? But did you see sparks of looking around corners, right? Did they recognize before their action took place what the result of that action would be? Even if they couldn't affect it or change it, did they recognize it, right? Now you see my Labradoodle walking by. And those are the areas in which, you can take something that's really, subjective or objective and kind of bring the other flavor in so that that person isn't penalized because they worked the last 3 years in a very stiff culture.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Leslie, I learned there's dog. It's cute. Leslie, I want to talk to you about the technical content experience, right? I wanted to learn more about. I want to understand the research that you do. What do you try to get at? What type of data are you really looking for to then help build these, build the right type of training solutions?
Right. Well, I mean, user experience research, which is what UX research is really a way of kind of trying to empathize with our customers to help identify their needs, their pain points, their motivations, their behaviors, and kind of build products that will be in sync with what they're looking for. So the type of data that we collect is both qualitative and quantitative. So, I do one-on-one interviews. I do survey research that is much more quantitative. We do usability studies, which a lot of people sort of know, about when they think about UX research. But there's a whole range of types of research that we do to help understand what our customers are looking for, what their expectations are, and how we might be meeting them, and how we might be falling short in some areas that we could address. And so the research that I've been doing recently has been, well, a lot of it has been around AI, because AI is very much disrupting the whole content creation experience. And as a result, we had to start learning about what our customers were expecting, what their realities were, what their questions were, and that's has been a big area. Actually, I've been working on both internal tools and external customers for some of the products that we have that are AI, generative AI types of features. And so yeah, it's been a very big variety, a wide variety of things that I've worked on, both internal, external, and hopefully making our customer experiences better. What I have been working on more recently, which has been really, really fun, is new to AWS customers, people who are like completely coming in from scratch. They are not AWS customers before, and now they are. And what are their specific and unique needs, and how might we, address those more effectively to, enable them to get started with AWS quickly and get started building and doing the things that they want to do. and without having to kind of have too much overhead in getting there. So that's been a really fun thing. And I did some interviews with new customers, and now I'm doing some surveying as well.
I have a question around both the quantitative and the qualitative data, right? Does one hold more value than the other?
No, not at all. I think that they are. So I'm a mixed method researcher, very much so, kind of squarely in that area where they do different things. Interviews allow you to dive deep and to really understand and that's where sort of the empathy comes in. Understand from the perspective of the customer what their needs are, what they're thinking, what their experience is with products that you produce. And sometimes, prototypes of products that haven't been produced yet. And so I work a lot with designers and product managers and such as we're developing those products, to really understand, what is it that our customers are looking for? What will help them? What will kind of move them forward to addressing the business solutions that they're usually looking for when they're coming to us at AWS? And then the quantitative is really to sometimes validate what we've learned, in those more small scale qualitative studies. But sometimes it's really to just kind of help us understand in a very sort of statistically significant way, what is the reality of on a variety of different levels. The questions that we want to answer, from our new customers, for example, which is the most recent project that I've been working on. How do they come to us? Where are they coming from? What are they doing once they get here? What other resources are they using? That kind of thing. And so we can learn, like, at the sort of the large scale, the 30,000 foot view of who our new customers actually are.
Gotcha. So we got a question I'm going to ask. I'm going to go round robin and ask everybody. Are the folks you're talking to excited about AI? So I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll jump over to the other two.
Okay. I think it's a mixed bag. Actually, I was actually surprised, because I think that there is a kind of hesitation. Some people, and actually the people who are most hesitant are the ones who are the most knowledgeable. I just finished a study, and it turned out that the people who were most kind of reluctant were the ones who were the most knowledgeable about AI. And so, yeah, I think that there are a lot of possibilities, that open up, but then there are some concerns, and security concerns, the lack of a human in the loop. And that's one thing that I will, say, is that all of the research that we've done shows that it's always important to have a human in the loop, that, that AI, just running rampant without any of us involved is probably not a good thing.
Gotcha.
So,
well,
yeah.
Bryant, security. Let's talk. What are your customers here?
I have to agree, with Leslie. I think, there is a bit of a hesitancy from what I've seen with not only customers, but I also take some college classes on AI, and a lot of students are incredibly excited. But the question then becomes, at least from my position, for my job, is, well, how do we secure it? And we sort of have to take a step back, I believe, with AI, much like with other technologies that have come, like blockchain, machine learning, like all of these technologies. We sometimes need to take a step back and evaluate, how do we then, apply this, right? What are the best practices? What are the documentations we can find? A lot of times technology comes way before any sort of thought comes out in terms of documentation and security. And I think with the hesitance with AI is joining that as well. What I normally say, and when I speak to folks about AI, I tend to say, treat it like a legacy application. You don't trust anything around it. All you have to have is put in protections and layers around it to defend it, but don't trust anything around it, much like a legacy application would. And, of course, trust but verify, right? You can trust the application to work if you tune it to the, specifications that you need, but always verify, right? Always take samples, right? This is not something that you just put in and you never want to look into a day in your life. This is going to be an ongoing process of validating, right? Ensuring that there isn't any sort of like prompt engineering, if there's any sort of manipulation. And yeah, try to find a place to put a human in. From what be human, I mean, I might be a robot, but humans are not credible people sometimes, but we're needed in certain cases, right? Much like with technology, to ensure that things are applicable, right? It's the reason why we have researchers, we have architects, we have managers. It's someone to verify, right, that this is operating the way it should be. And I think with AI, we need to take that step back and have that further conversation.
I agree, and you need to have a diverse set of thoughts in the model itself, right? Otherwise, it's just going to spit out something totally biased. Nicole, want to get your thoughts on this, since you're dealing with private equity customers as well.
Yeah.
What are their thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I've actually been in the AI space since 2014 when I was in the Watson group at IBM. So selling it when it was still, very early, just post Jeopardy. But I would say, a lot of what the private equities are doing are they're challenging their portcos, at least in the software world that I live in, to find ways in two paths. One, to productize it, sending it out to their customers, but also internally. Right? There's one customer I'm working with has a 15% mandate coming down from the CEO on each department finding cost-cutting measures using tools like Q Developer or Q Business to, it doesn't have to be in labor costs. It could be in, time costs. It can be in lots of different ways. But so I see it kind of from both sides, right? And I think they're all super excited. Obviously, security's, ground or day zero always, and even more so. I actually work a lot with Steve Wilson when he was at one of my customers last year, and he is one of the founders of the OWASP LLM, top 10 LLM. And so, it is a space that is just evolving. And I think, the ability to generate the language is what really kind of, moved us to the, atmosphere on this. And so I think it's great. It's exciting. I just hope we also don't over-rotate at the expense of other things that we should be having conversations about. And so, all things in moderation.
Right, I agree. And it's funny you mentioned, IBM Watson days. I'll share a quick, funny story. Just about 10 years ago, I was on the agency side. I went to a New York City tech startup meetup at NYU. And IBM was one of the folks that were there along with multiple startups. And the other startups started talking about what their new cool product was, et cetera. And then IBM comes in and says, well, we're the 100-year-old startup,
Yeah.
and then they start to dive, and they captured the audience like that. And then they started talking about Watson, which I was fascinated by, and I still am, and everything that
it's exciting.
Yeah.
I was part of the very first public commercial use cases of Watson, Geico. It's very public now at the time. So I really got to see behind the scenes as we were going to that. And it was funny because I remember having lunch with the CFO of Geico at the time, and they had no idea, even internally inside the Geico building, nobody knew except down in the basement that's what we were working on. And then Warren Buffett goes and announces it at one of his annual conference. And nobody at Geico knew that was going to happen. And so it was just kind of crazy times and very exciting times also.
Awesome. Let's see. There was one quick comment from Isaiah. I think the companies that are going to be most successful with AI will have governance around how they build, implement, and execute AI. I agree.
Amen. Yeah, and kind of to that point, what he said is, the one thing I hear over and over again is, as the CISO, and Brian, I know probably also lives with this, is you can't be the no, right? These companies want to work with it. They're going to work with it. And if you as a CISO say no, they're going to do it as shadow IT. And so, the governance is important, and then let them work inside that little secure spot to build out, their applications and their sandboxes and ultimately, hopefully, production environments.
Gotcha. Agree. So let's
Yeah,
see.
I mean, Ray, I think from a recruiting perspective, you know, it could help with tasks, but I don't think that it's going to replace the candidate experience. And when I say tasks, it could be the good luck on your interview tomorrow reminders, and scheduling prep calls, and being able to be of service when there is a need to navigate bottlenecks and time frames. You need a human to do that. But I do think that there's an opportunity to add tasks to take care of those menial tasks.
Yeah.
Personally, though, you know, when it comes to medicine, I would, if I had to choose between a robot or a human, I would go with the robot. I would rather have a robot operate on me than a human that might sneeze, cough, or hiccup, where there is less likely a precision failure with the robot.
Bryant, you have thoughts on that?
I mean, it just sounds like, you know, she wants to go with me versus a human. Like, I completely agree, right? Like, you know, I think much like with a lot of technologies, right, or even other things in other industries, there's always hype around the newest thing that comes out every couple of years. And I think, you know, technology advances so quickly that, you know, it's so, you know, the initial jump is to jump on something really quick. But I think the real winners and the real winners of these sort of technological races are those who sit back and think about how to execute perfectly, right? How to gather the resources, how to do it right, how to define it, and how to move with purpose, right? And I think that's pretty much goes across all of our specific roles in terms of utilizing AI.
I agree. I totally agree. Let's move to this other portion here because I asked everyone to share some photos and, you know, personal or professional, want to get to know you inside and outside of work even more from a visual perspective. So, Leslie, you shared this photo. I know the orange shirt's volunteering. Tell us a little bit about this story.
So this was an opportunity that came up at HQ2 to be involved in creating some hygiene kits for people who were experiencing disadvantage. And we got together and created, you know, in a race against other teams to create the most as much as quickly as possible. And it just kind of represents a little bit about sort of who I am. You know, part of what I've gotten involved in when I came here to AWS is I'm very a big proponent of mentoring. And so I am a mentor, and I have a mentor through the AWS Women's Program. And it's, you know, it's just been fabulous. I think, you know, to work with people, to share your, you know, the opportunities that you have, and then to give back. I feel it was really very important for me to do that. When I was pivoting away from academia towards industry, it was really the efforts of a lot of people who helped me along the way. And I felt very, very, you know, confident that it was important for me to give back, even though maybe I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I still just quickly turned around and, you know, said, what can I do to help others? And this was just one example of how to do that.
That's awesome.
A lot of fun.
That's awesome. And Nicole, you mentioned something about homeless shelters and you were part of a program there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, recently we added a couple of new leadership principles, and one that really spoke to me, and I think we lived, you know, for a long time before it ever became something formal, was, you know, success and scale brings broad responsibility. And I know, you know, at the core of Amazon's beliefs, when we go into a community, it's kind of like a bank account. We have to put more deposits in and not just always withdrawals. And so they make a very conscious effort to give back to those communities. And, you know, I'm in the HQ2 area, as I think Leslie is too, from one of her earlier comments. And actually that what you were building, those hygiene kits, then were shipped over to the homeless shelter that I'm on the board of, Carpenter Shelter, and then they work to distribute them out from there. But it's really about, Amazon gives away billions with a B a year, and I thought, well, gosh, if they're going to give that much money away, I want them to give it to things that I'm passionate about. And at the time, this Carpenter Shelter is in the shadow of HQ2. We had already, before I came on board, given some money to them, and we're now in the millions that we have done to support them through the Bezos Foundation and through Amazon and our Champions program. And it's just such a blessing. And, there's not just in that space, but also, with disaster. And we have, 4 main criterias for donations and giving from Amazon: eradicate homelessness, eradicate hunger, STEM, and then disaster recovery. Not in the sense of AWS disaster recovery, but physical disaster recovery. And so, we have this one group called Crisis Cleanup. And a lot of Amazonians were affected with these most recent hurricanes, and we felt helpless. And even though Amazon has a channel to support employees that need financial help, sometimes it's like, I've got a tree in my yard, right? Physical stuff. And so this crisis cleanup, anybody can join at any time. You just dial in. You're basically part of a digital call center, and people call in, and sometimes they just want to talk, and you listen to them, and you empathize. Other times you might need to get, hey, there's a Boy Scout troop over in this area close to you. I'll put you at top of the list. And you help basically bring this core of volunteers that are out there together with a core of need. And you help, kind of like with the COVID hackathon that we did, you bring them together, right? And help assimilate the needs and the people and the talent. So it's just really, to me, a great part of what energizes me every day to be an Amazonian and to be the best that I can be. And I've been really blessed to get that opportunity to support. And this is my Ruby, who we heard barking earlier, and that we are at the Skills Center. And through this homeless shelter, there's a group of primarily Salvadorians and in Alexandria, and it's called Casa Chiralanga. And one of the other board members, who's actually studying theology at Harvard right now, Leslie, she brought about 50 kids over. And so I brought Ruby and put her little, choose kindness and our little AWS banner. And she was the mascot of the day. And we took the kids into the Skills Center, and we did, some different challenges with them. So it was a lot of fun, and Ruby had a great day.
That's awesome. And there's a completely different type of photo that you shared with me.
Yes. So we were talking about kind of the, up front about the diversity of thought and the diversity. And this was 2018. I had just, a few months in, I had the luxury to go to reInvent, and I was standing here waiting for my boss, and I looked out and I'm like, oh my God, there's no women. And so I took a bunch of pictures. And then when I was studying them later, I found the one woman that you'll see right in the middle. And I also joke, like, where's Waldo? And the poor woman, I have no idea who she is.
You look surprised, right? Like, where's everybody?
She was like, she looked at me like, help me. And I actually have another photo from the Sunday night world record, event with no women in the picture. And this is actually what, kind of inspired me at early days to start as one of the 3 co-founders for Women in the Southeast, which we then merged into Women at AWS. But, the STEM as being one of the 4 pillars that we provide a lot of financing to. I'm active with Women in Technology. And I just think it's so important that everybody knows that there's a journey and a path for any choice that they make. And if we can reach out and help them understand that, we're here to shepherd them and lift them up and bring them in. And most importantly, support them during the journey, not just kind of throw them to the wolves. That, and AWS is very much a culture of do it yourself, right? Both from a customer and from a employee point of view, but also we can't lose sight to, what Bryant talked about with TechU. I've mentored quite a few TechU people through the process and worked with them. And it's just, it's about being on the journey with them. And so it's really exciting to be part of that.
Yeah. And I'll even add, unfortunately, not just females that it's lacking, it's just lacking diversity in general.
Yeah, exactly.
So sad.
It is.
Yeah.
And I remember I saw a picture recently at an event. It wasn't an AWS event, but I was there with another AWS person, and it was all white men on the screen. and, on the panel, and someone was like, "Oh boy, I don't think their IDE person like paid attention to this," and it was completely random, a place that we just happened to be nearby. And I thought to myself, yeah, I mean, if I was a woman sitting in this audience as a customer of theirs or as a vendor or whatever, I had no relationship to this event, I would be thinking that. And so it is important that we all and I went up and told someone afterwards, like, hey, great event, great conversation. I didn't know anything about your product before I walked in here, just happened to be at this big event, but you might want to think about that. And they had it had not even it was a consulting company, it never even crossed their mind.
Wow.
It was just a bunch of their customers. So it's just, yeah, it's important.
Wow, it's super important indeed. Want to get over to you, Bryant, as well. You shared some cool photos. So let's walk through some of these.
So one thing I'll say about AWS, and I think I think this is a great example of this actually right now, like this panel and this photo, is that if we have something we want to do that is considered a passion project, right? We're given a certain time to do that. And that's what this is, right? This has nothing to do with security. This has actually something to do with something that I love doing as a hobby, which is playing video games. And a lot of video game companies are customers. And so I contacted a gentleman who also went to TechU, who was who was the solutions architect for this major video game called League of Legends. And together with them, they were working and building this whole game day, which is this gamified event to learn about different technologies. It was around machine learning. And I was like, hey, I will join you. I will do anything you want. I will pay for food, whatever the case may be. And luckily for me, I was able to not only participate, I was not only able to contribute, but I also got free tickets to their Worlds event, like the biggest gaming event of the year. And this was at the very end of a long day of running game days with just an amazing crew of people that came together for this. And you can just see me smiling really brightly because I was so happy. Like it was one of those things of like, this is not work, this is just having fun. And now we're gonna go see this one team just obliterate this other team, and just I have videos of that. And it was just so much fun. It was absolutely a blast. And that was, I think, one of the greatest photos that was ever taken.
That's fantastic.
of my professional career. Yeah.
That's cool. And I love this photo too.
Yeah. This one's a little bit more interesting. So within AWS, we have we're constantly trying to train, right? Not only just in security, but different other, every single industry has their own, what would you call, level up events. And so this was a security training event for all SAs. It was in Chicago. So you could fly to Chicago. Wait, no, it was Denver. This was Denver. You could fly to Denver. It would be 3 days, 4 days. You would train with security specialists, and it's things we have running internally all the time, right? Mentorship within and outside as well is a big part of our culture. And this was just a photo after I think 3 days of doing just security trainings.
That's pretty cool. Cool. And there's a couple more that you also shared.
So I split it between personal and professional. So this is another picture of me smiling really hard. So I had gotten my skydiving license. So to get your skydiving license, you need to jump 25 times. My mom was not happy about that either. But you have to jump 25 times out of a plane, a perfectly fine plane, and land on your own. And so this is basically a stamp of approval saying, hey, you made it. Congratulations, you got your license.
But you said a perfectly fine plane. I'd hope it would be a perfectly fine plane that you're jumping out of.
Yeah, I mean, we go through what would happen through emergencies or a bird or strike or something like that. But yeah, no, my mom is still not enthusiastic. No, I don't like it that you jump out of planes. But I love it. I love adrenaline. Yeah.
It's funny. Nicole,
how has that changed you, jumping out of a plane?
Say again?
How has that changed you?
So I jumped out when I was the first time I ever jumped out, I was 18 years old. So right before I got my tattoo, I jumped out of a plane and was like, this has changed my life. I want to get my license. But I was really young, right? This is a very expensive hobby in sport. So I kind of pushed it back a few bit. But it's only been recently that I was able to sort of take that, and now every 2 months I fly down to Florida. I see my family, I skydive. And so I absolutely love it.
I'm rooting for some wings as a next tattoo.
I have a few tattoos in my head that I want to get out first, but definitely something skydiving related. I'm sure my mom would also hate.
Jump.
Yeah.
What about the word jump?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
He
Yes.
reminds me of you, Bryant. He's very much an adrenaline junkie. Rides the electric skateboards and jumped out of an airplane. Decided, I think it was like an early midlife crisis because we're only 30 when our first son was born. But he's like, I want to get a motorcycle. And I was like, no, you're not getting a motorcycle. No way. He's like, well, then I'm going to go jump out of an airplane. I'm like, okay. He's like, I didn't think you'd say that. I thought you could let me get a motorcycle. I'm like, no, you jump out of an airplane once or twice. You'll ride your motorcycle every day. So he ended up on probably about a dozen times and jumping out of airplanes. He wanted to get his license, but didn't make it that far, thankfully. But it is by bar none his best experience also.
Yeah, I'm that friend that will be like, you haven't skydived? Let's go skydiving. I will pay for the trip. I will fly you to Florida. I will drive you to the skydiving's place. I will jump with you. I will let you push me out of the plane. I am that nice. But yeah, no, it's definitely an experience that I think everyone should at least try once, if they're physically able to. But it's definitely something that I think gives perspective. I think once you do it, it makes life a lot more enjoyable.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I enjoy it fine, and I'm not jumping out of a plane. Just saying.
Same here. I have a fear of sharks and fear of planes flying, so forget jumping out of one. That's not happening. We have a few minutes left, and before we wrap up the show, I just want to quickly remind folks, I put a link in the chat for a very quick, simple survey. Would love to just hear from you. It'll take you 1 minute to fill out. It actually helped improve our show as well as scaling the show. So there's a lot of great things happening for 2025 thanks to your feedback. So please do fill it out. If you are, if you're first time watching on Twitch, make sure you follow the channel. It's great to watch a lot of other content that's live with other SMEs, and you could actually build right there in person. I also think it's almost like free tier support sometimes. Great time to connect with someone internally to maybe point you in the right direction, get you to the resources without you having to go through, a sea of noise when you're trying to find specific information. So make sure you do that. And the other is make sure if you're on, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube careers channel. So it's youtube.com/@AWS careers. We just started recently focusing on growing the channel. It is great to hear from. There's a lot of great content. If you care about, say the day in the life of a solutions architect, or what it's like to be a woman at AWS, or any other part of any other affinity groups. It's great to see what they're, see the diverse set of opinions from others. There's short videos as well as long form videos as well. Pretty much for you. I mean, everything that we do here is to provide you with as much information for you to make a decision for yourself. We don't tell people you got to join us, this and that. We let you connect the dots for yourself. If you're inspired by what you hear, that'll naturally happen. And sometimes we may not be the right organization for you, and that's okay too. We're still going to root for your success. Simple as that. So I just want to quickly share that. Now, I want to go round robin quickly before we close out. I'll start off with you, Leslie, with this one question. What do you love about AWS?
I love the people and I love the pace. Really, I have to say that was one thing that sort of surprised me. Just the chance to work with some of the smartest and the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. And the ability to do a variety of different kinds of impactful work. That is really what makes it for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Nicole, what do you love about AWS?
I love being able to make a difference with my customers. I mean, I lived through COVID and really watched one of my best customers, almost not survive. And they were able to go from not able to survive to thrive with the benefit of partnering with AWS. And that just really is, I think, in a nutshell, what we do best.
Awesome. Thank you. What about you, Bryant?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely working within the confines of what I think is very enjoyable, which is cybersecurity, but also being given that freedom to do things that I also enjoy personally, right? It's very much a divide between, working, security, but then also being able to divide some of that time into other things that can just blossom into going to reInvent, to going into championship games, and just doing things that ultimately just like bring joy to your life.
Awesome. I got to ask you, Jenna, what do you like about working here?
You, my friend. No. Well, really that too. But yeah, the people, I'll get even more specific than the people. So my peers, my stakeholders, my leadership, all things that are complexity where I just want to sometimes feel like I run away, but I would never do that. And I face it and get uncomfortable and grow. That coupled with making a difference on people's lives, with helping along the very rigorous journey and the chance to advocate as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll close it out. For me, it's always been the people. I'm inspired every day with every single person I talk to and meet for the first time, and looking at the work that they do and the impact that actually makes on the world. I wanted to make sure there was a mechanism like this where people can freely speak about the impact that they're making or hope to make. And, I was lucky to be part of teams that are genuinely designing solutions that were either improving lives or saving lives. So that's something that I could, if I do walk away, I could, I'm very proud of that. And to be honest, I won't walk away. So that's where I'm at right now. But again, we're at time. I want to thank everyone here. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Jenna, for all joining. Again, great seeing everybody here, and thank you for the conversation. And thank you, Isaiah. Congrats again. Really excited for you, buddy. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great one.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Take care, everyone.